part.
Yes.
All right, and we're live. Hi, this is Melinda from Hope When There Was None. I am joined by the beautiful, my special guest, Julie. She's here to talk about navigating those difficult conversations, some toxicity in their trauma as well. And you know what? I'm going to let her take that away. She has just got a beautiful story of healing with somebody that she loves dearly, very dearly. And I'm also, just before I let you take it away, I'm sorry, I'm taking it back. I do have all of her links. They're going to be down below, but you can find those also in the comment section too. Okay, go ahead, girl.
No, that's fine. Well, I've got a lot of different facets to the journey that I've been on for the last 15 years. But one of the things that had really attracted me to this podcast and what I was hoping to contribute to the conversation was my experience with helping someone else through trauma. And why this is so important to me is because there are so many books and resources out there to help the person who has been through the trauma to, heal and work through it, and support systems. But one of the things that was really hard for me, because my husband did go through a lot of trauma before we ever got together, was that once I really realized, because of course people are not, there's no reason to be so upfront about all of that when you're first dating, and that's very private, very difficult information to share, and it would not be reasonable to expect someone to be so upfront with it right away. But as the story unfolded and as I realized just how much trauma he'd been through, I started trying to look for resources for me. How do I help him? How do I talk to him about this? How do I support him through this recovery of finally being willing to talk about some of this? And there was nothing. There just really wasn't anything out there for the support person of how do I have these conversations. And so that was what I was kind of hoping to contribute a little bit, is how do you help someone open up about these difficult things in a way that feels non-threatening, that feels safe, that allows them to say what they need to say and feel what they need to feel. So that's kind of been my journey on a personal note. And so that's what I was hoping that we could get into a little.
Yes, and that's so challenging because I wish there was a book or something, and I hope you do write one, but I wish there was some sort of manual, because when you jump out of that relationship or whatever that was for that person, yeah, there's no book. I mean, navigating my own personal story with my partner, that was hard. It was hard. I'm sure you had, or he had, those PTSD moments. How did that come about? How was that for you guys? What did you see signs?
Yeah, well, and I think that I did read one book that was very helpful, that talked about some of the differences between men who are having trauma and women who undergo trauma. Not that either one is better or worse, but just that the experience and the processing of it can be different, because there are certain social norms that can be impressed on that person in the mix of it. And for men, one of those difficulties is, you should have been able to fix it. You should have been able to stop it. You're a man. Shouldn't you have been strong enough to not let that happen to you? Why couldn't you just say no? Why couldn't you just stop it? And so that can create other levels of trauma where the person feels really emasculated. They feel a lot of guilt, like they caused it, like they're not allowed to talk about it because that general response often is, well, why couldn't you just stop it? Why weren't you just physically strong enough to stop it? And so the experience for me in the relationship really didn't show in obvious ways for a long time. It was just more of not wanting to be touched. So a lot of times I would joke when we first got together that trying to hug him was like trying to hug a tree, because every time I would, reach and try to hug him, he would just stiffen up. He didn't know how to be touched in a way that was not harmful. And this was, multiple layers of trauma across his whole life. I mean, he was put into foster care when he was 10. And adopted when he was 12, but the family who adopted him was a whole different kind of traumatic. And then he went into the Army and went overseas and was involved in a lot of strong conflict. And that was a whole other level of trauma. So it was like trying to piece apart, where is this even coming from, was half the battle. But yeah, so for us, there was just so many layers. There were so many layers. I think that the Army trauma was the most obvious when we were first together, because that kind of PTSD was triggering in a way that he had very little control over at first. He didn't have any tools in place to help him when he would be triggered in that way. And so that would just be the overarching. I remember once when we were newly married, before we had kids, we had moved into this townhome across from a battlefield, like a national park battlefield. And our townhome faced this beautiful, beautiful pasture land, and there were deer, and it was gorgeous. And we had no idea when we rented that place that they would do cannon demonstrations on Saturday mornings sometimes.
Ooh.
And we found it out by the sound of a cannon being shot off about 100 yards away from our bedroom window. And it took him 6 days to be able to fully, calm back down from that. So those sorts of things were really obvious at first. But some of those other things, and it would be easy for him. I always feel so protective of him to clarify that I don't consider him to have lied to me when we were first together. He was protecting himself and he was protecting his story. And I don't think that you can blame someone for doing that. Yeah. But a lot of the things that would come up, he would kind of chalk up to the Army. Well, it's just because of the Army. It's just because of the Army. It's just because of the Army. Mm. And I had no reason to not believe him until things started getting a little bit more intimate for us, and we started getting to know each other better, and I started to kind of question it a little, like, well, how does this have to do with the Army? I don't really understand. Can you help me understand it? And that's when the story would kind of fall apart a little bit.
Oh, my heart.
That's a lot.
That is. That is. And, I'm thinking of, I have an 11-year-old now, and I can't, these stories, when I hear them, I can't imagine whatever that is trauma for a child. And I know I've been there, and it's still, I just want to hug his little inner child. I do. How is he doing?
At this point, we have done a lot. And one thing that I always try to make sure I'm also careful to say is that, you cannot heal somebody else's demons for them. You can't heal their trauma, and you can't fight their demons, because they have to do that. Your job is to support them on that journey, but you can't walk that path for them. You cannot heal something for them that they're not ready to heal. You can't force things to happen on your timeline. So he is the one who has had to do tremendous amounts of reflection, of pushing and pushing and pushing himself past his comfort zone, in order to heal for me, but really mostly for our boys. He was able to do a good amount of healing just for me, because he just wanted to be a better husband for me. He wanted to be able to show up for me in the ways that I needed. But when I was 6 months pregnant with our first son, he looked at me one day and he said, I refuse to be excuse me for cussing. I refuse to be a shitty father for my kid just because I've got a lot of trauma that I'm not willing to deal with. And that was when he really doubled down and really dug in, because he was like, I am not going to be absent for him. I can't be this easily triggered. I can't be this stiff. I can't be this closed off. I can't be this cold and be the father that I want to be, that I never had. Like it was so heartwarming for me and so amazing to me, because a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people, they're not able to make that step. But he kind of jokes that he had so many examples of how to do it wrong, that he just figures that if he just did the opposite of everything that was done to him, that he had a fighting chance at being a good dad, But you cannot do that work for them. But he has done an amazing job, and it has taken so many conversations between us, and it has taken, I don't want to take credit unnecessarily, but he will tell me that, he does it for me, that if it weren't for me consistently supporting him and showing up for him and loving him through all of this, that, he wouldn't have been able to do it. So I really, we value each other a lot. He provides a lot of strength for me. It's not just a one-way street. He has been incredibly wonderful to me in the things that I've needed to go through. And, he's a very strong support system for me when I've gone through really difficult situations. So, it's a two-way street. I don't want it to feel like I'm just some angel that's just.
No, I think it's beautiful. Oh my gosh. And that's what a normal relationship, with somebody that's been broken needs to look like. And I'm sorry, you can't see me on the podcast. I'm ugly crying over here. It's so beautiful. I got goosebumps. That is so beautiful. And everybody needs to have somebody like you, and not necessarily that you're an angel, but you're normal. They need to have that normalcy, somebody that will walk beside them, like you said, that's going to be there to be supportive and uplifting and not tear them down, so they retreat back to, and that's what he said about being a father. It's just
yeah. Well, and as my boys have gone through, because my oldest one is actually turning 10 at the end of this month, and that was the age that my husband was put into foster care. And so not to rain on a parade or cause a huge upset, I don't want him to imagine the things that happened to him happening to our son. But there have been moments in time where I have gently pointed out to him, do you realize that Nikolai is the age right now that you were when that thing happened to you, or when you went through that situation? Can you imagine, like, just not enough to get yourself upset, but could you imagine him going through what you went through right now? Because one of the things that he would constantly say and do, and I think this comes back to this, I'm like, you're 10, but it's this idea that a boy should have been able to say no or stop it, or, somehow do something different. And so using our real life actual son who's standing in front of us as an example to say, you always say that you should have been able to do more. You should have been able to do better. You should have been able to do different. Would you expect that of him? If he went through what you went through, would you expect him to have been able to handle this differently? Can you see how small and young and innocent he is? Can you see how overwhelming that would be for someone his age to handle what you had to handle? And, not in a way that I want him to start getting really upset, but just to try to provide a little bit of gentle perspective. Right. We expect so much of ourselves, and we tend to have these memories in our head where even though we're remembering something that happened when we were 8 or 10 or 12, we're judging ourselves as though we were 30 and should have known better, or should have had a different way to handle it. And that's not true.
Oh gosh. So slowly bawling. It just, wow, what a beautiful love story. And like I said, I hope everybody finds somebody that feels safe, that holds space for them, that feels that they can just unburden themselves over time, of course, over time. Oh, and to see that. Yes, definitely.
Maybe one of the things I'll just
I'm going to sit here and just cry. You go right ahead.
Yeah, well, maybe I can just kind of give a couple of the tools that I've found to be some of the most helpful along the journey. So when things were first starting for us, one of the things that happens when children go through very high levels of trauma is that they learn to just shut everything down, and they completely dissociate from how they actually feel. Because if they allow themselves to feel what they actually feel, it's so overwhelming that they can't function. And so that's something that we, I think is pretty well known about anyone, but especially young children who go through trauma in their primitive years. Right. And so one of the things that he and I had to deal with a lot when we were first together was helping him to know how to express what he was actually feeling. Because a lot of times the best that I could do would be to tell him what I was seeing. I would say,
Okay.
honey, you seem really tense right now, or really mad right now, or you seem really upset. Have I done something? Has something happened? What's going on? And a lot of times he would go, I'm not mad. And I'm like, well, you seem mad. And he's like, well, I'm not. And I'm like, well, okay, but something's going on. I mean, you don't seem relaxed. You don't seem happy. And he's like, I'm happy. And I'm like, you're okay. But really having to not get frustrated by that, and not just be like, that's ridiculous. You're lying, or you're not telling me something, but really understanding that he's totally disconnected from how he's showing up right now, because he's showing up like he is just furious. And helping. But sometimes I would say, are you mad? Maybe he would be in a moment where he was feeling emotional, and I would say, can you help me understand what's going on with you right now? Are you mad? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, are you upset? I don't know. Are you frustrated? I don't know, Julie. I don't know. I don't know. And I was like, okay, well, and it finally hit me because of that book that I'd read about trauma for young boys, about the dissociation and about this idea of shutting down your emotions and being dissociated from them. And I just thought in that moment, do you know what I mean when I'm asking you if you're frustrated? And he goes, not really. And I was like, okay, okay, stop everything. So if you were mad right now, you might be feeling like being really kind of forceful or aggressive. You might feel like you wanted to punch the wall because something was really, really just making you mad. If you were frustrated, you might be feeling like you wish that something would happen, but you can't get it to happen, and you feel like there's a block between what you want and what's actually happening. If you were feeling, you know, whatever it is, if you were feeling just upset, you might be feeling overwhelmed, like everything's going wrong and you don't know how to fix it. Do any of those things sound like how you're feeling right now? And he had to think for like a few minutes, and finally was like, I guess I'm feeling frustrated. Like, okay, great, thank you, that's perfect. Okay, you're feeling frustrated, let's figure that out. So why are you feeling frustrated? I don't know. Like in the beginning it was very like the level of patience, but the second that you lose your temper with them, it's over, because that's what they were waiting for the whole time. So having to understand they're not doing this on purpose. He's not just flat refusing to tell me how he feels. He doesn't know how he feels. And he's not just refusing to tell me why he's frustrated. He doesn't have the ability to calm down and think rationally enough to figure out why he's frustrated, to tell me why he's frustrated. So, can we dissect this, and can we reverse engineer this, and can we identify, like, okay, so you're feeling frustrated because, and sometimes it was something that happened 3 days ago. And I'm like, wait, what? But having to realize like that's part of it. And sometimes that journey had to look like me pushing just a little to help him understand my experience of his emotions or the way he was showing up. So sometimes in those earlier years, I would have to say, honey, I'm feeling really frustrated right now because we had this irritated moment earlier today. And I know based on our past that if you are not able to do something, if we are not able to do something to get to a better place, it's going to take us 4 days to get past this one small irritating comment that happened. And I really don't want my whole weekend ruined by this. I don't want us to sit around the house all day for the next 4 days just stewing about this one tiny little comment that I didn't even mean anything by it. And it's just been blown way out of proportion. And I need you to figure out how to like pull yourself together a little bit and to not be so upset. It was an honest misunderstanding. It was a flippant comment that I made. I didn't mean anything by it. Like, can you figure out how to kind of pull it together so that we can have a good weekend? Because we've got plans this weekend that I really want to enjoy. And he might be like, give me a couple of hours. And he might have to just go do whatever to process it and pull it together and figure out how to get himself back into a better mood. But if I was just saying, you're being ridiculous, you're blowing this out of proportion, this is so stupid, you shouldn't be acting like this, you should be able to get over this, this is not going to help at all. He would never be able to do what I was wanting if I was acting like that and reacting like that. So it takes a lot of patience, but the payoff is just so worth it. It's just so worth it, because on the other side of it, we had something. I'm so proud of him. He's going to college for the first time. I'm so proud of him. He was the first person in his family to graduate from high school, and now he's going to college. And I'm really proud of him. And but he was having some, I mean, it's overwhelming and it's stressful. That's a whole other ball of stress. And he was able to come up to me and say, Julie, I am not doing well right now and I need some help. And I was like, drop everything. Like, okay, what do you need? But that's how far we've come, you know? If you can be patient and you can be consistent and you can just keep taking one step forward on that path, eventually you can get to a place where you're standing back admiring at how far you've come, going, this is crazy. I can't even believe where we started and where we are now. This is amazing.
Yeah, it's almost very surreal because you're speaking to my heart, and I know because this is something that we went through. My partner and I, Mr. Awesome, trying to navigate. He had never experienced that, so any type of trauma like that or toxic people in his life, which was a blessing. So trying to find normalcy, I was trying to figure out normal, and you know, you're right. I speaking about different comments or something that Mr. Awesome would say, and I would take it, not blow it out of proportion, but I'd really be thinking about it too hard. And he'd be like, why are you mad? It's like, I'm not mad. And he'd keep on, well, what's going on? You don't seem like yourself, and so on, until I would find, like, I'm sad, all right? I'm really sad. You don't make me mad. You make me sad. I couldn't put it in words. It's just like, I'm really sad. You know, but it would come out angry because I was just feeling frustrated because I don't know. And I still have this issue. And this has been over 10 years. But, you know, learning, having those breakthroughs like that. And again, having somebody that has that patience and is giving you that time. What a blessing that is. You know, you say that you're not an angel or anything. There's not a lot of people that do have that level of patience with their partner. They would just go to the deep end to this. Oh, she's mad at me again, or he's mad at me again, and he's just not over this. Like you said, those are common reactions that I do hear from others, sadly. So please take it, girl. You are an angel. You and those others, Mr. Awesome, Earth angels, really and truly, because it does take a special kind of person to make it work, to keep on with that patience. And I know it's frustrating at times, but it really is. Thank you.
Absolutely. You know, one other thing that helped us so much in the beginning, when it was all raw, it was all new, it was all the first time that he was really letting me in, was writing letters back and forth. Because a lot of times, you know, he would say, I can't talk about this. I can't say it out loud, or I don't want to see the look on your face when you hear it. And so I asked him one day, I said, well, could you write it to me in a letter? And he was like, I don't know, let me think about it. And he came back about an hour later and he was like, yeah, I think I could do that. And I was like, okay, that would be awesome. So he went upstairs, we're in the townhome, he would go upstairs and write a letter to me and tell me, like, this is what I want you to know. And then he would give it to me, and then he would go back upstairs because he didn't want to see me read it. And he didn't want to see my reaction at all. And I would read it, and I would write a letter back to him of like what I was thinking or what I was feeling or what I wanted him to know. And I would go upstairs and give him that letter. And then he would and I would leave so he could read it in peace. And then he would write me another letter. So sometimes, even when you desperately want to tell somebody something, doing it out loud and doing it face to face can just be so overwhelming. And if the both of you can get in that rhythm of like, you don't have to actually say the words out loud to me. You don't have to actually see me react. You don't have to be here when I hear this information or when I learn this thing, and that was so liberating, and it helped us so much. It helped so much for us to be able to be more honest with each other, but in a way that didn't feel nearly so threatening or overwhelming. So that I would highly, highly recommend. That was, and we also though made a pact, because there were very, very sensitive details in these letters, that we burned them. I mean, we burned them afterward, because those words did not need to be seen by anybody else. They didn't need to be found by anybody else. The information was known, and now it could be released. So we were just very, I mean, you don't have to go to that extreme, you shred them up, but not holding on to them where they could ever potentially be found by somebody else, because that confidential, it's very, very confidential, very personal information. And the idea that it's written down somewhere and somebody could possibly find it could be really overwhelming. So making sure you're also like, you can write me the letter, and then I'm going to hand the letter back to you, and you can destroy that letter. I don't have to keep it, so that's another
that
thing.
is so powerful. I love that.
Mhm.
I love that. And I do have a few comments here from Manda. Hi, Manda. Thank you for viewing. She said, this is completely on point. She often asks if we could start over or have a redo.
Mhm. Yeah.
Wow.
So I think absolutely. Do you mean even within the same relationship? Because I want to say yes to, I think it's always easy to think that you have to start a new relationship in order to start over. But I think that you can start over again within the same relationship for sure. Where, but you both have to be able to really let it go. You have to both be willing to actually move forward and say, that was what it was because of how, because of whatever. And that's not what we're doing anymore. We're going to come over here and we're going to heal from this. And I think that, maybe if the starting over is, maybe I'm just guessing here, that maybe Amanda feels like that maybe she has overreacted. I tend to yell and scream when this person triggers me, or I tend to or I tend to shut down and do whatever those trauma responses are. And maybe that person, maybe she's asking, if I've done that within one relationship, can I go back and try to fix it? And I would say absolutely, 100%. But just having that conversation with that person, and being honest about, I know that the way that I've maybe handled things in the past has not been healthy, or it's not been helpful, or I know it's been really stressful to you. I want to do better. I'm trying to do better. I want to do better with you. I need your help because this is really hard for me. It's really overwhelming to me. I'm not exactly sure. I can't promise you I can be perfect, because I don't think I can be perfect, but I want to try to do better and to be more communicative and to be less reactive. And, can you help me through this? Because not that you're putting it on that person, they can't fix it for you. But if you're partnering together, that I want to be better, I don't know if I can do it on my own. I want help. Can you help me? Sometimes Raymond and I have to have these moments of, how do you help somebody when they're triggered? How do you cue to them? Like, one of the things that I will say to him sometimes which is not any sort of magical phrase, but if I can just see that look in his eyes, that he's just not here, he's reacting from something in the past, I might look at him and say, babe, I can tell that you are really stressed out right now, but I don't think that you're here with me. Are you here with me right now? And just pause and give him a second to think and go, oh, no, I'm kind of not. Okay. Sorry. All right. Hold on. Sorry. Let me reset. Let me start over. Let me think again. So sometimes having those moments, some sort of cue, some sort of phrase, some sort of like, hey, I'm a little overwhelmed because I'm not sure why you're reacting this way. Can you help me figure this out? It does have to be a partnership. It does have to be that you're both trying to do better. But when you pose it that way, I need your help. I want to do better. I'm trying to do better. And sometimes he'll tell me, can you tell me when I'm doing this? Can you alert me when I'm reacting this way? Because I don't always realize it. And because he's given me permission, or because he's asked me, can you bring this to my attention? I can do that for him.
Oh, that's awesome. And Amanda did reply back. She said, yes, within the relationship, for when you are talking about holding on to something that might ruin the weekend, as an example. So she says, I do this with my kids. I don't have a romantic relationship right now. My children and I have come so far, and she has. It's amazing how well this language works when the other person is just willing to repair. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah. And I
Yes.
think I try to put it very blatantly like that. Like, can we just have a do-over? Can we just zip this up and move on? Very clear language of what I want. Can we just, I know that this was an ugly morning. I know this didn't go well. I know we both got kind of heated, but setting your intention, I really want to have a good weekend. I really want to enjoy spending time with you. So can we just move on? And pretty much always we can both agree, like, okay, yep, that was a that was a train wreck that just happened. Yeah, let's just both agree to just move on. But then you both have to, and that's where that trust comes into, that they will move on and that they don't bring it up again at the end of the day. And those sorts of things do have to be built on trust. But yeah, absolutely.
I've had goosebumps throughout this whole conversation. I think this is phenomenal. It really is. It really is. And so I'm trying to think, this is more like your partner, but I'm thinking you could probably do this, for somebody that's healing from also that parent, that toxic parent or family member as well. Now, how has he been able to navigate then is he still in contact with his foster family or adoptive
Um,
family? Or, I mean, how's that dynamic?
So one thing that I made a mistake of when we were first together, because I grew up in a relatively normal family, and I really couldn't understand what he'd been through. And so I made the mistake of pushing him to try to reconnect with his birth mother. Big mistake. I really pushed him to reconnect with several people who had just really been horrible to him, because in my head I was like, but it's your mom, but like she's your birth mother, she has to love you. And this was me being really naive at 18 and 19 years old and not understanding that is just not necessarily a reasonable request or a reasonable outcome. And I guess the good thing that came of it was that I was there for that, and I saw it with my own eyes, and I was like, oh, she's freaking nuts. No, bye. Like,
Right.
and actually I was the one that eventually pulled the trigger on that, because there's so much internal conflict around that. It is your mother. She is supposed to love you. She is supposed to be able to get through her own crap to show up right for you.
Right.
But she isn't. And she's still blaming. She hasn't changed at all. And I was the one who saw how much damage just her being in his life at all, just having contact with him, how much he regressed in his progress.
Oh.
And there was one specific instance that happened where she was creating a lot of drama, calling, screaming, crying, making up lies, all this. And I grabbed the phone from him and started screaming at her and was like, you ruined his life. Like, I was over it. I was so over it. I was so mad. I was so mad for him and so mad at her. And I was like, do not ever call him again, ever. And and she screamed and hung up on me, and We've never made contact with her again. But I looked
Good.
at him after that phone call and I said, I messed up. I am so sorry. I should not have pushed for this. I should not have asked for this. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand this dynamic. And I messed up by telling you that you should have tried again. And now I am the one who is saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be around her. I don't want us to call her. I don't want us to talk to her. I don't want this. I don't like what it's doing to you. I don't like how much it's upsetting you. I don't like how much drama it's causing. I don't want this. And because I was so willing to be so strong, I do not want this. I messed up. We should have never done this. And I'm sorry because I'm the one that pushed for it. He was able to go, okay, your call. I said, yep, my call. And I'm saying, no, we're not doing this anymore. As far as the adoptive family, because that was so complicated, what I learned from the birth mother was to keep out of it and to let him take the lead. So I always default to, what do you want to do? If you want us to go see her for Christmas, I will make sure it's in our schedule. If you don't want to have anything to do with her, we won't. It's up to you. This is your family. This is your history. This is totally and completely up to you. And I have maintained that ever since the last 10 years. I'm like, this is 100% your call, because this is your past and this is your trauma. And I should not have ever thought that I knew what to tell you to do with that. That was my mistake. So.
But you don't know what you know, but now you know. So definitely.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's part of the learning process.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And I do hear that all the time. And it really does make me upset, because I hear people say that to other people all the time. But it's your mother, but it's your son, but it's your brother, but it's your fill in the family member blank.
Right.
And no, I have learned the hard way. I've seen it myself. That is coming from a place of naivety, that you don't understand what has actually happened there. And trying to guilt someone or force someone to reconnect with someone who has hurt them is not helpful at all. It is furthering their trauma. You're not allowing them the autonomy to say, I refuse to continue to participate in this trauma. And they need to have the autonomy to call that shot without being guilted or pressured or told that they're wrong. So I also want to say, anyone who is trying to put down a boundary, I am so big on boundaries. Anyone who's trying to put down a boundary and say, no, this person is toxic. They only ever upset my calm. They add no value to my life. And every time I'm around them, I spiral for 2 weeks after. And someone wants to come in and tell you, no, but you have to, but you should, but they feel so sad. They miss you. Who cares? Who cares what they want or how they feel? You know, they're the ones who caused the trauma. They're the ones who broke. I talk a lot about broken plate. You know, that idea. If you drop a plate on the floor and it shatters, you can say you're sorry, but it doesn't fix the plate and it doesn't make it usable again. Right. And, you know, they broke the plate. So now they have to deal with the fact that that plate doesn't work anymore. Like, the end.
It's true.
I'm not on the reconciliation train. If that doesn't align for you, if that's not what you want, if that's not what feels true and best for you, I am not here to push you into that. I don't think that it's healthy or helpful at all to feel like you are obligated to fix something that somebody else broke. But that's obviously, I get kind of passionate about that because of my, because of my experiences and because of what Raymond's been through. I just, I feel like that is a dangerous path to walk down, to tell someone else how to deal with their trauma and how to deal with those traumatic relationships. I think each person should be able to decide that for themselves without any guilt or remorse or regret or pressure to do something other than what feels right for them in the moment. And that may change. That, it may evolve or change over time. There may be seasons where it feels like you might want to try to reconnect, and other seasons where you feel completely shut down about it and don't want to have anything to do with it. And I don't feel, as the support person, I don't feel like it's my job to try to push that, boat in any one direction. I'm just here for the ride. You want us to go hang out with that person? I will come with you. You want us to shut them off? I'll block their phone calls for you. Like, whatever you want, I'm here for it.
We know you'll shut somebody down. Just boom. You go, girl.
I will block her. I will call the cops on her. I will do whatever I have to do. We are not doing this anymore.
No, that's awesome. It really is. That's beautiful. And you know what? I like what you mentioned, not guilting a person to reconnect with that person. And I know, being an advocate, I have countless times have heard, I don't know if I could sever that connection. My mom, it's my mom, even though that mom might have done horrendous thing, or that dad might have done horrendous things. There's that guilt for that victim. It's my mom, it's my dad, it's my grandpa or grandma. And that there's some guilt there when you feel like you should sever it, but still we have that. It's family.
Yeah. And society puts a lot of pressure on that reconciliation. Yes. For sure. A quote that I heard recently that really, really spoke to me on that front was, you should be more concerned about showing up in the right way for the people who come after you than the people who come before you. You should be much more concerned about healing the generational trauma so that you can show up as your best self for your children or your grandchildren and everyone who comes after you than worrying about pleasing your ancestors. And I think that is a very healthy approach, because that whole not my circus, not my monkeys, not my circus, not my monkeys, those dysfunctional family members are coming from a place of trauma, and you can have compassion for an understanding that it's coming from a place of trauma without allowing that into your life. You can have compassion and boundaries at the same time, and saying, yes, it's my mother. And yes, it hurts me to have to cut her off, because I wish that it didn't have to be that way. I wish that she was able to show up for me in the way that she's supposed to, in the way that a mother is supposed to, but she won't do it. And that is her choice. That is the mother's choice to not heal her own wounds and to not do, again, you cannot heal someone else for them. You can't fight their demons for them. You can't turn your mom into the mom she's supposed to be. But what you can do is say, the buck stops here. This generational trauma stops with me. And I am going to be the most healed person I can be. I am going to be the most whole, happy, healthy person that I can be, so that I can show up in the world in a way that is as happy and whole as I can be. And so I can show up as the best mom that I can be for my kids. And so that everyone who comes after me will be better for the work that I did. And as much as I hate having to sever this relationship, because it should be, in a perfect world, this should be able to be fixed. But I can't fix it if they won't fix it. So I have to just accept that as something that's broken, and to grieve that, this sucks. This just sucks that my mom will not put in the work to be who she needs to be for me. And that pisses me off. And to be able to process that anger and that frustration and that grief that person refuses to do what's right by you, but your actions are based on their actions. And if they won't heal, then that is the decision. And you can't really make it other than that. You can only create boundaries around your mental health and your personal space so that you can be a happy, whole, healthy person and bring that joy and that healing into the world.
Awesome. Wow. Those are some amazing golden nuggets. Wow. Golden nuggets of truth. Wow. Yes. Yes, sister.
Awesome. It's hard. It's so hard when people won't show up the way that they should, the way that you need them to, the way that you want, the way that you crave for them to show up for you. Right. It is something that you have to, it comes in waves, and you kind of have to keep coming back to that mindset that I cannot fix this if they will not fix it. And I hate it. And it's making me mad, and it's making me frustrated, and it's making me want to punch a wall that they won't do what they need to do to show up for me. But what I
Yes.
can do, what I have control over is my mental health, my happiness. I have control over what I expose my children to. For us, that is a big one. What are we exposing our children to? Are we recreating, are we passing on generational trauma because we're so busy trying to please the people that came before us that we're
Mm.
passing on pain to the people who are coming after us because we're not willing to be the one to take the hit. We're not willing to be the one to take that hit of saying, I am going to be the bad guy. I'm willing to be the bad guy. I'm willing for everyone to talk bad about me, to say that I abandoned the family, that I didn't show up, that I'm hurting everybody, that I'm holding grudges. I'm willing to be the bad guy if it means that I'm the good guy for my kids, because that's what actually
Yes.
matters. And from here
Yes.
on out, it's going to be beautiful, and from here on out, it's going to be right. And when I'm the old person and it's my kids and my great grandkids that are coming to visit me, it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to be happy and healthy and supportive. And that is the future that I am excited about, because that is going to happen if I keep making these good decisions. I can deal with the pain. I'm strong enough to be the bad guy. I'm strong enough to cut off the wounds. I'm strong enough to say no. I'm strong enough to take those hits from everybody that wants to turn me into the bad guy, because they matter way more than they matter to
Oh,
me.
yes. And she's like standing ovation.
Yeah.
And she said, yes, grieve. And that is so important, to grieve, to be able to grieve from that trauma, that loss, that whatever that situation was, that person. And I'm all about grieving. Yes, allow yourself to get mad, get angry, grieve, say your words. And oh, I love the conversation here. I do. This is phenomenal. And I know I could spend another hour probably talking about this. I really, really and truly, this has been really awesome. Really.
Well, I'd
I
be
can say
happy to
really.
come back another time if you want us to
Yes.
again another time.
Yes. Wow. So if
It's something I
anybody
feel very
has,
passionately about, for sure.
yes, yes, there is some passion there. And I love that. I do. I love that. I'm just picturing you as this like warrior with some breastplate on and a sword. I got you, honey. I got
Yep.
you.
Yep.
Yes. Everybody needs that. Everybody needs that. Okay, warrior.
Yeah.
Yes. So if anybody would like to contact you, again, all of her links, you can find them down below, but they're also in the comment section. Please visit her website. You do have a course, also
Yeah.
the Art of Conversation, 6 weeks from awkward to articulate,
Yes.
and that can be found at your website. Can you talk a little bit about that
Yes,
before I
I
let
am
you go?
so thrilled about this course. It is just beautiful. It is a 6 week course. My students right now, we're in the first ever launch, and we on Monday we're dropping module 5 out of 6, and I take people through the full gamut. So it starts with personal presentation and conversation 101. How do you show up in a way that makes a great first impression, that you come across the way that you want to come across to others? Module 2 is small talk success. So all of that networking, that hi, how are you, those meet and greets that can feel so uncomfortable. How do you show up in those situations in a way where you feel confident and happy? You know how to ask better questions and give better answers. uh, Module 3 is called Money, Religion, and Politics, and it's all
Ooh.
about how to navigate those really difficult conversations that sometimes get thrown on you, and how do you have boundaries around those topics? How do you get away from those topics if you don't want to talk about them? And then a few other fun little, golden nuggets of, how do you step into maybe a new religious space that you've never been in before in a way where you can feel comfortable and confident about what you're doing, and that you're not going to, make an idiot out of yourself because you really want to go to your friend's christening, but you've never been in a place like that before, that sort of thing. And then module 4 is dealing with conflict. So it is all about how fight or flight response in you and others, and how do you minimize that response, and how do you handle people who are being aggressive towards you with boundaries. And then module 5 is personal advocacy. So that is getting, and that's getting more into those relationships that are more ever present in your life, like your work situations. those colleagues that you have to deal with on an ongoing basis. How do you deal with those issues? And then the last section is called Helping Those Who Are Hurting. And because I am a physical therapist, I work in home health, I work with geriatrics, I work with a lot of people who are overwhelmed and anxious, end of life issues, all of those sorts of things. And I see people running away from those conversations when what would be best served is for them to lean in. And I want to help give people the words so that they can lean in to those conversations instead of running away. So we go over a lot, and we go over how to ask for what you need to get your needs met. How do you help other people? What we were talking about today, how do you help other people tell you what their needs are so that you can more adequately meet their needs? So I am really excited about that. But it's the culmination because it all builds. So, it's really about how do you, it's all mindset, boundaries, and practical skills. So my distinction is that I am always going to tell you what to say, like say this, not that. It's going to come across better if you say it like this, because a lot of things out there will give you the theory of like, oh, you should be charming, you should talk to people, you should introduce yourself, you should seem confident, but they don't give you the words. Like, okay, that's great, but how do I do that? How do I help somebody who's screaming at me to stop screaming? How do I help someone who's hurting tell me what's wrong? What are the words I need to say? So that's what I focus on a lot. That's why I'm your conversation expert. What are the words I need to help in this situation?
Oh, and I love that. And I think we sort of lost our interpersonal skills and communication. So this is phenomenal. Awesome.
Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
that.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, yes,
Thank
yes.
you.
And you have a book out too.
Navigating and Avoiding Awkward Conversations. It's a fantastic place to start, and it's available on Amazon, Kindle, and Audible. And I read the one on Audible. So if you like the sound of my voice, I'm the one reading that one. And that one goes over a lot of the same things, but it's a little bit more, there's a lot more topics. So the course is going really deep into some of the things, and the book is a little more broad so that it can hit a lot of different points along the way.
Oh, phenomenal. And there is a guide to 5 steps to stellar boundaries. I like
Yes,
that.
yes, yes. I am all about the boundaries, and I think that boundaries are a fantastic place to start. Everything from module 4 on, for me, it's all about coming from a place of having good boundaries. And I know that for people who have undergone a lot of trauma, that boundaries are something that maybe have never been on the table, and understanding what a boundary really is, how it works, when it's your responsibility to put that boundary down. And how do you create that boundary? How do you get clarity about what is a boundary, and how do I communicate it to other people consistently? What do I do if they're pushing back on my boundary? So that guide is a fantastic place to start with helping to work through that process. And that same process can go for whatever the issue is. You can go through that same process with any boundary that you need to put down, getting really clear. What is my boundary? Why is that my boundary? How am I going to communicate it to other people? And what do I do if they push back? So that guide is, I've had great feedback on it, and I think it's a fantastic place to start if that's something that people are having trouble with.
Oh, well, great. And now I know our next topic next time you
Yeah.
come on.
Yes.
So
Yes.
please show her some love. Go ahead and look at her links, get her book. I would love to get your Audible. I really would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amanda says that these are so practical. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. This has been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot. Thank you. Cried a lot, but
In a good way, though. In a good way.
So thank you everybody for watching. I appreciate it. And again, show her some love. Go visit her links and so on and so on. And thank you for joining us today. Hope you have a great rest of your day and stay safe. We'll see you later. Bye.